界初めての完全立体映像ゲーム機バーチャルボーイ
The Virtual Boy. It was a 32-bit, 5th-generation console and an extremely ambitious project from Nintendo, 4 years in the making, and it was intended to bring virtual reality gaming to the home. It was created by Gameboy guru Gunpei Yokoi and debuted in 1995, marketed as the very first console capable of displaying stereoscopic 3D graphics. Mounted on a stand and supplied with a controller that looked almost like the GameCube controller's distant cousin, players had to rest their heads inside its eyepiece to view a red monochrome display. Each eye saw a different angle, which then combined gave the illusion of 3 dimensions, further complemented by judicious use of parallax scrolling effects to enhance the impression of depth. It saw a release only in North America and Japan and never saw the light of day in any PAL regions. The immersive experience of the Virtual Boy was optimistically expected to justify its relatively high price point, the equivalent of $300 today. Sadly, a combination of poor initial sales, disastrous critical response, and Nintendo's funneling of funds into the development of the Nintendo 64 led to the inevitable failure of the Virtual Boy, and it was cancelled the following year, believed to have sold a total of only around 800,000 units worldwide. The Virtual Boy became notorious as Nintendo's worst ever failure and was apocryphally cited as the reason for Gunpei Yokoi's departure from Nintendo. And it certainly did leave the mighty Nintendo gun shy of developing any 3D technology again, at least until the much more successful 3DS, which was released in 2011. The ill-fated Virtual Boy has a relatively small library of games, with only 22 officially released titles. But were any of these games worth the eye strain and headaches? In this video we shall see, as I present my top 5 pick of Virtual Boy games. Your mileage may vary of course, but I don't own a Virtual Boy and I played these games via emulation, so I pretty much assess these games by how much I enjoyed them purely as games, without taking into account any of the enhancements, or indeed the health complaints, of the 3D experience on the original hardware. So let's begin my 5 of the best Virtual Boy games. Galactic Pinball is a fairly standard pinball game set in outer space, and this was actually developed by Gunpei Yokoi himself. Choose from 4 tables and flip a puck, not a ball, oddly, to rack up some points. The usual pinball rules apply. Keep your puck from falling through the bottom of the table and use the flippers to hit the targets. You know the drill. You get 5 tries instead of the traditional 3, but otherwise there's nothing really here that you haven't seen before. However, one infuriating snag I kept experiencing was the puck colliding with the bumper when flipped. It kind of slows the gameplay right down, and you can find yourself doing it repeatedly until you finally get it launched up the table, or, as is more often the case, come a cropper. There's not really much else on offer here. The graphics are nice, and certainly playable enough too, but it's also just pinball, and overall the tables are a bit samey. It's not bad, but it's nothing special either. Available on other platforms, it was first seen on the PC Engine and enjoyed ports on the NES and various Japanese home computer systems. Panic Bomber is a Puyo Puyo type game with a Bomberman theme. Line up matching pieces to clear them from the screen and earn bombs to detonate satisfyingly to wipe out the rest of your screen, while at the same time filling your opponent's screen with garbage. Since there is no 2-player option, the Virtual Boy didn't have multiplayer functionality. It relies on the story mode, in which you face off against increasingly more challenging opponents. This uses the familiarity of the gameplay and the Bomberman brand to bring players to the Virtual Boy. And although every element of this game absolutely smacks of a desperate attempt to bring players to the Virtual Boy while offering nothing new compared to its other ports, it's still a fun and challenging game with plenty of character. In and of itself, it is a serviceable game, although I would probably recommend that you catch this on a full colour console such as the PC Engine. If you're getting a distinctly Starwing vibe from this game, you're probably not the only one. Finally, some polygons appear on this allegedly 32-bit system. Well, sort of. They're wireframe graphics actually. Anyway, Red Alarm is a fairly decent shoot-em-up, developed by T&E Soft, a third-party developer for the Virtual Boy, who certainly took a little more than just inspiration from the Super Nintendo's flagship game Starwing. You take control of a tech wing fighter and battle your way through 6 levels, each of which end with a boss battle. The controls can be a little tricky and take some getting used to, as there's so many planes of movement which you need to control. Sadly, there's no barrel rolls here. The wireframe composition of the terrain can make navigation a tad hazardous also, but it's certainly a capable game and unique amongst the Virtual Boy library as the only shoot 'em up of this kind. It is a shame that the Virtual Boy didn't enjoy more longevity, as I believe this genre of game had stacks of potential and a sequel could well have improved on the flaws of this game. There were 2 versions of Tetris on the Virtual Boy, one being the quote-unquote official version that had actually more in common with Blockout, and then there's this Japanese exclusive. What's so special about this? Sure, it eschews the 3D for a much more flat experience. For the most part, it functions pretty much like traditional Tetris, but there's one variant on this version that I particularly enjoy. In V-Tetris, alongside the usual suspects, the A-type and B-type games, there is an added C-type game in which you place blocks down on a spiral that you can rotate to find a better block placement or to make extra lines. At the same time, additional blocks fall down on the opposite side of the spiral, which means you have to work in 360 degrees to keep the blocks from filling up the screen. It takes a bit of practice, but eventually you will find yourself making outrageous lines with a little bit of timing and judgment. A welcome addition to the Tetris line, which offers a little something new. For those of you who have played the original Mario Brothers, this game is going to feel very familiar, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. The Virtual Boy was gimmicky enough with its 3D graphics, so it really was in its advantage to include simple and well-known games in its library to increase accessibility and appeal. This game is no exception. It's the usual Mario Brothers action, designed by Shigeru Miyamoto. Stomp or shell the baddies to clear the screen and move on to the next level. Lather, rinse, repeat. The difference here being that the action takes place on 2 planes, in the foreground and in the background. In addition to the regular methods of dispatching enemies, you can now fling shells across the playfield in an attempt to hit your targets on the other side. It makes good use of the 3D space, rather than just relegating it to a visual aesthetic. There are 99 levels to play through here, and you can choose to start off on any of the first 40. However, and most annoyingly, there is no save feature whatsoever. An outrageous oversight for such a game. If it weren't for this ridiculous omission, this game would be perfect in my opinion. And that about wraps it up. Those were my top 5 Virtual Boy games. If you have a favourite game from the Virtual Boy that is not on this list, and you believe it deserved a little bit more recognition, just comment below. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more videos like this on the channel, please leave a like and subscribe. I'm appreciative of all feedback, so if you have anything to share, please leave a comment below. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you the next time on Retro Respawn.